Hey everyone, a very good evening. I hope I'm audible and visible. I hope everybody can see me and hear me clearly. So, very warm welcome to another session on CMAT. Shweta Sharma from Career Launcher welcomes you to another session on CMAT 2025 series, session 2 for reading comprehension grammar today. So, we'll be covering up another passage, maybe two passages if time permits, and also a few questions on grammar in between. Okay, I hope everybody's keeping well and I hope we had a great new year. Let's get started. Let's get back to the preparation again and let's get started with some interesting passages. So, before we start, I would like to quickly recap on how a reading comprehension has to be dealt with and what all question types can we have when it comes to an RC for CMAT. Okay, so reading comprehension, as we've stated earlier as well, it's more like a movie watch, right? What happens in a movie? For first 30 minutes, you get to just view, what the movie is about. For at least for first 20 to 30 minutes, we get to see an introduction about what the movie is about. Is it a thriller? Is it a sci-fi? Is it a rom-com? What sort of movie? What genre does it follow? Right? Once the movie's, an outline has been already given up, uh, click to the bigger picture has already been given up, then comes the bigger picture. That's where you find more of songs, right? Major story building up, right? Major incidents happening. If it's a murder which has to happen, or if it is some kind of investigation which takes a different angle altogether. So that's what happens. And after all, once the major cast has been built up, comes the climax where you get to see that, whatever the initial phase of 30 minutes was built up in the body. That's what we call in the RC, right? That's where you got the songs, the story, the incidents, and eventually the thriller or the sci-fi ends up. It comes to an end in the climax, right? So at the climax, we get to see the moral of the movie, or maybe the story coming up with a happy ending, right? Similarly, we see in any RC which is written by a good author, we find that the author, similar to the 30 minutes, it throws the claims in the introduction, right? We find a parallelism between a movie and a book you read. So, movie also gives you a window to the entire story that is going to build up. Similarly, an introduction of an RC or any passage also gives us a window to the entire body which is going to build up. And the body of the passage includes certain examples, certain analogies being used, or it could also have the tone of the author, which gets a bit rhetorical, repetitive, to again focus the attention of the reader on the claim which has been stated. And eventually, just like the moral or the climax of the movie, we have the conclusion of the author, or maybe the opinion the author shares at the end, where you find more of the author relating to the claim which was stated. For example, if I say, just a moment guys, for example, if we say the claim of the author in the first paragraph is alcohol consumption by a pregnant woman can lead to irreversible disorder on the fetus. Okay. For example, there's a claim of the author where he is talking about the impact of alcohol consumption on the pregnant women and what happens to the fetus eventually. So this is the claim which has been stated by the author. In the next few paragraphs, maybe paragraph 1 talks about why it can be detrimental, right? Why can the impact be detrimental? The reasons are being stated, right? So in the reasons, the author states that, the mind, the brain of the child, the fetus gets impacted. and it leads to some kind of you know some kind of irreversible damage, which cannot be again fixed up by any drugs or any kind of operations, which might fetus or a baby might go ahead in the life. So it might lead to some disorders, some kind of damage in the fetus body. Secondly, maybe the second paragraph talks about the mechanism could be, when a mother consumes alcohol, so the rate at which the mother's liver digests alcohol, right? And the author might compare it with what happens with the fetus liver, you know, fetus liver. So, fetus liver might not have been completely formed. It also depends on which semester of the pregnancy are we talking about, right? Maybe a fetus is just 2 months old, the liver is not even formed. Maybe the fetus is, say, 8 months old, the liver is almost formed, right? So, whatever semester or trimester we're talking about, that will also define how much impact on the baby that alcohol can create. And maybe in the last paragraph, the author eventually talks about that because of these reasons which have been stated here, creating irreversible damage, or maybe because of the mechanism which I've stated here in the passage, mechanism which talks about how the alcohol passes from the mother's womb to a fetus womb to the placenta, and how the digestion happens. The rate of the digestion that happens of alcohol in the mother's womb is very different from what it happens to the baby, right? So all that comparison is being done in the previous two paragraphs. Eventually, post that, we see that the author states that therefore, hence, a pregnant woman should not consume alcohol, right? Or differ from consuming alcohol consumption, right? So he might again try to reiterate the same fact which he stated in the claim in the conclusion in the similar manner, just like here it was stated. So your introduction and your conclusion are going to be almost on the similar lines, right? The introduction and the conclusion are going to be on the similar lines, bereft of the fact that what the body states. And most of the times you'll find that the body, the passage is including facts from the introduction. It's trying to, talk more on what the claim of the author was, and also trying to build up the passage so that the author can share his or her opinion or conclusion at the end, right? That's how the structure of an RC would look like. Now, this is about the RC, how it is structured. When it comes to questions, of course, the questions can be asked only in two ways. They can be a direct question and they can be an indirect question. Okay. So, direct question is more of a fact-based question, right? An indirect question is more of an inference-based question. But in CMAT, you would not find very tough questions when it comes to even inferential questions. When we say inference questions, it's more like when the examiner is trying to question you on what is the main idea of the passage, right? What can be the tone of the author? What can be the title of the passage? Or contextual meaning of a certain word which is written, right? So you need to figure out the contextual meaning of a certain term, right? There is some term which is being used in the passage and you're supposed to figure out the contextual meaning. Fact basis, straight away, true false question which is given in the passage. Okay, so let's have a look at some questions. This is a business passage I've picked up for you, though they would not outrightly state it for you, but I have picked it up as business passage. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Quickly go through the passage, guys. Let me know once you're done reading. We'll quickly move ahead to the next slide then. Okay, giving you 1 minute. Quickly go through the passage and then we discuss it over. I hope it's not a very tough passage. Please let me know if you're done. I'll take you to the next slide. All right, switching to the next slide, guys. Please have a look at this one. Okay, can we quickly discuss the passage now? I hope everybody is done reading the passage. Not a very tough passage. Let's quickly go through it. So, what does it say? I have mentioned the genre of the passage here so that you can easily relate to it, but in your exam, they would not be mentioning whether it's a humanities or a social science or a business passage per se. Right? So, let's have a look at the passage and then see if we can actually figure out what genre does it belong to. It says competition is driving many companies to implement performance improvement programs, but there are different approaches to improving a company's performance. Okay. So, one thing they're talking about is competition. That competition is driving many companies to implement performance improvement programs, right? PIP hota hai, performance improvement program, when an employee is working for a few months or few years, and he or she is not performing well. The company wants the person to be judged. The company wants the employee to be judged. So for that, they have introduced PIP, that is performance improvement program, wherein the company can check through the scores, through the performance under a certain period of time, whether a company feels that the employee can be, taken in as a permanent employee, or the employee can actually survive in the organization's culture or not. That's how the company is, the company tries to assess the performance of the employee. So competition is driving many companies to implement performance improvement programs, but there are different programs, approaches to improving a company's performance. So they're talking about two different approaches here. Different approaches. That means this is like an introduction. This is like an introduction to two different approaches the passage is going to talk about. One of them it says is activity driven approach, that is activity centered program, often advocated means, which is more like often advocated or promoted by consulting firms, define goals in a long term global manner, and typically involve formulation of a new managerial philosophies as well as extensive motivation and problem solving training of employees. Companies assume that if they introduce enough improvement activities, operational performance will improve, right? So what they're talking about here is that companies assume that if they introduce enough improvement activities, if there are enough improvement activities, operational performance will improve. In 1998, for example, a large financial institution implemented a total quality program to improve operational performance and win customer loyalty. After 2 years of costly effort, however, the program's consultants summarized their progress by citing improved employee communication and morale, but no improvement in profits. Right? So we're talking about one thing, we're talking about performance improvement programs, right? What is the main major here we're talking about? That is performance improvement program. And then he's talking about different approaches. So it should be basically improvement for the company as well, not just for the employee, right? So activity centered program means that were basically for the consulting firms, defining goals in a long term global manner and typically involving formulation of new managerial philosophies. That is, if there is a higher management taking care of certain reportees, so what level these reportees are going to be at, how the management is going to take care of them, then these reportees might also have some other subordinates reporting to them. So how is this culture going to be taken forward? So all of that they're talking about here, the entire hierarchy, right? That is what is being referred as activity centered programs, which are often advocated by consulting firms, define goals in a long term global manner, and also involve formulation means new innovation or invention techniques for new managerial philosophies, as well as extensive motivation and problem solving training for employees. Then companies assume that if they introduce enough improvement activities, operational performance will improve. That is what they were thinking, that if they introduce enough improvement activities, the performance of the company will also improve. So in 1988, for example, a large financial institution implemented a total quality program to improve operational performance and win customer loyalty. After 2 years of costly effort, however, the program's consultants summarized their progress by citing improved employee communication and morale, but no improvement in profits, right? That's what they saw, that this was majorly focused on improving performance, but there was no improvement in profits. That's what they saw. Program's consultants summarized that the progress by citing improved employee communication. So, of course, the employees were able to communicate well, amongst themselves. There was a good communication which happened. The communication level improved, but the major thing was the revenue, the profit, which did not see any kind of improvement. And then it says studies show that activity centered programs offer meager means very less profit or payoffs compared with results driven programs. So second thing he's talking about is, he's talking about two kinds of programs. One is activity driven, right? Activity centered, and the other one is results driven. Okay. So this is how you can map out the two paragraphs. These are the two programs we are talking about here to improve performance, right? One was activity centered, the other one was results driven. So results driven programs, which require relatively little initial investment, set specific measurable short term goals such as increased yields, reduced delivery time or reduced product development time, and implement procedural changes only when they lead directly to improved results. Okay, so what it says is that studies show that activity centered programs, they offer very less payoffs. They were not as good as they were as they were comparing it with the results driven program. Why now? If the author is giving a claim here that activity centered program were not as good as results driven programs, right? They were better than activity centered programs. So why? We need to justify this, right? So the next statement justifies it, that results driven program, which require little initial investment, relatively little investment, specific measurable short term goals such as increase yields, reduce delivery time or reduce product development time, and implement procedural changes only when they lead directly to improved results. So that was a benefit. Whereas if they're talking about activity driven program, of course they would not be as good. Invest time and money in preparatory efforts. So within the preparatory time itself, it includes a lot of time investment, right? A lot of time investments, a lot of efforts that rarely yield desired outcomes, rarely give us the desired outcomes. So that is not achieved. And then it says results-driven approach identifies specific goals and the resources, tools, and action plans needed for meeting them. Right? So they don't talk about these tools and action plans which are needed to meet them. They don't even care about it. So overall, the passage understanding is we're talking about competition nowadays, that the companies, they're facing a lot of competition among themselves, and due to which they're thinking of improving their performance. So this is companies' performance which they're planning to improve, and the company's performance improves when the employees' performance improves, right? So they're trying to improve the employees' performance in order to increase company's performance. By company's performance, of course, they want the profits, they want revenue, right? And then it talks about two different approaches which have been cited here. One of them is activity centered, the other one is results driven. When we talk about activity centered programs, it says that they've not been as useful as they were supposed to be, because they just increased, they just improved the employee communication. But on the other hand, the major chunk of improvement they wanted was in the profits, in the revenue generated, which they could not find under activity centered program. And then it shows why the activity centered programs are not as good as results driven, because results driven are the ones which have less time, less investment involved as compared to activity centered programs. So result driven programs which require relatively little investment, little initial investment, and set specific measurable short term goals such as increase yields, reduce delivery time, or reduce product development time, and implement procedural changes only when they lead to directly to improved results. Whereas activity driven, if you look at, they need a lot of effort and a lot of time. Henceforth, it says that the results driven approach identifies specific goals and resources and tools and action plans needed for meeting them. Therefore, results driven are better as compared to activity centered program. So this is again one of my suggestions, guys. Once you're done reading the passage, please try to identify the general idea, the structure and tone. It makes the understanding of the passage and the question better, and you do not have to reread the entire passage again. Then you have a question coming, at least from a inferential point of view, right? So G means you're trying to figure out the general idea. S means you try to figure out the structure or the function of each paragraph, right? And tone means you figure out the tone and title. Okay, so we figure out the GST of the passage before we move to questions. So tone, how's the tone of the author here? I'm giving you 30 seconds. Quickly tell me what is the tone of the author in the passage, and then we move ahead. Also drop in your answers for the general idea of the passage. How do you find the general idea of the passage is here? What is a general idea? What is a structure? Structure means role of each paragraph. Giving you quick 1 minute for the entire GST. All right, let's quickly discuss it. So general idea is about the two approaches, activity centered program and results driven program. And of course, the author says that results driven is better than activity centered program. This is all to improve the performance of the company. Structure, if we look at, first one introduces the idea of the performance improvement and also introduces the activity centered program. The second one compares the two sorts of programs. And tone, of course, is analytical because the author is comparing, right? So the tone of the author has to be analytical. Okay, we'll also have a session on discussion on the tone types for the entire exhaustive list. But for now, tone is analytical. Let's move to some questions now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Quickly read the question stem. Okay, the question says author of the passage would most probably agree. That means it's a true false question. With which of the following statements about the total quality program mentioned in the highlighted text? So, what is that total quality program we are referring to? I'll just show you this. Right, the total quality program it's referring is here. Okay, can you see this? What is the total quality program he is referring to? You just have to read this and answer the question. The question is pretty much here. If you want to refer the question first and then move to the question, the passage, I can also do that. But the question simply says author of the passage would most probably agree with which of the following statements about total quality program mentioned in the highlighted text. So what is that total quality program he is referring to? Okay, just read it. Like here it says, in 1988, for example, a large financial institution implemented a total quality program to improve operational performance, win customer loyalty. After 2 years of costly effort, however, the program's consultants summarized their progress by showing improved employee communication and morale, but no improvement in profits. Okay, so here are the options. Quickly go through the options and tell me what's the answer. Have a look at the options, guys, and tell me what's the answer. All right. So it says its effectiveness could not be adequately measured. Are we referring to effectiveness could not be measured? The idea is about total quality program, right? So its effectiveness could not be measured. Of course, it could be measured. That's why the author seems to be in favor of results oriented one. It had considerable weakness, but they were ultimately outweighed by its strengths. Where are we talking about strengths and weakness? Of course, both the programs would have some pros and cons, but nothing has been justified again. It just says that this one is better because of some XYZ reasons. That's in the second paragraph. And this is a local question. It's a paragraph which is basically contextual. Right? You need to read a certain paragraph and answer. It's simply contextual. Its success in improving employee morale was achieved primarily because the attention the employees received. It's not because of the attention. It should have concentrated more on winning customer loyalty. It failed to reach a major goal despite having achieved some success. Right? So that's what the passage says. In the last paragraph, if you might have read it here, the last few lines of the first paragraph, it says, after 2 years, costly effort it went. However, the program's consultants summarized their progress by citing improved employee communication. Of course, there was an improved employee communication, but the major important thing was the improvement in profits, which was not there. Right? So it failed to reach a major global despite having achieved some success. So answer should be E echo for this. I hope this was clear. Right? Guys, I hope this was clear. Effectiveness could not be adequately measured. We are not talking about whether a program could be measured or not. Of course, they did measure, and that's why they came in favor of the results oriented one. It had considerable, we're not judging the pros and cons. We did judge in the second paragraph, but it's a first paragraph question. And then too, we did talk about this particular program being less successful because it failed to achieve the profits. It failed to increase the profits, which was the major goal looking at. Right? So failed to reach a major goal despite having achieved some success. So some successes in improving communication, employee communication. Okay, let's move to the next question now. So it's a very important question. Before we move to this question, again, one quick understanding to be made here. What do we mean by question types and what is it to say primary purpose question? And what is it to say main idea question or central idea? Okay, so primary purpose means this question answers what is the purpose, why the passage has been written. And when we say main idea or central idea, this question type answers what is there in the passage, like the summary. Okay, this paragraph, this question type gives us the justification of the passage being written. This one gives us a summary, like what is there in the paragraph. Okay, so here the question is about why the passage has been written, the primary purpose of the passage. Take 30 seconds. It's an inference based question again, not a fact based question. Quickly go through the options, eliminate the options, and tell me if you got the right answer. We'll quickly discuss it over. All right, let's discuss the question. I think the question was easy, not very tough. So, very important to understand what terms are being used in the options like explain, describe, assess, or argue. What is it? Does the author argue anything? And it says activity centered programs are less likely to produce desired outcomes than our results driven programs. He is in favor of results driven program over activity centered program. So, this can definitely be eliminated. Assess the relative strengths and weakness of activity centered improvement programs and results driven programs. Yeah, he does try to do that. Let's hold on to this option. Describe the kinds of companies most likely to benefit. We're not talking about the types of companies. This is definitely an absurd option. Explain why activity centered programs are usually more expensive. It doesn't justify the cost involved behind activity centered program. Though it does say that it's more costly as compared to results driven, but it doesn't justify why they're usually more expensive. Explain why many companies have been attracted to activity centered improvement programs. Not really. So if we look relatively, all the options are absurd except D, which actually gives us the right usage of the terms. The author doesn't argue anywhere. He does assess. Assess what? The relative strengths and weakness of activity centered improvement programs and results driven programs, majorly in the second paragraph if we look at. Right? That's what the author does here. In the second paragraph, he says studies show activity centered programs offer less payoffs compared with results driven. So author is in favor of results driven, and here he is calculating the benefits and the pros and cons of both the sides. Results driven programs, which require relatively little initial investment, set specific measurable short term goals, increase yields, reduce delivery time, reduce product. Whereas activity driven approach invests time and money in preparatory efforts that rarely yield desired outcomes and identifies specific goals and resources, tools, and action plans needed for meeting them. Right? So this is a better choice. So you'll be going for D, that is assess the relative strengths and weakness of activity centered improvement program and results driven programs. All right, let's move ahead to the next question now. Please have a look at this question. This is a structure based question as I asked you to do. Right? Structure means what is the function of each paragraph. So how do you find is the organization of the paragraphs? Please have a look at it, then we discuss it. All right. Shall we discuss the question? It says, which of the following best describes the organization of the passage? Okay. It says two related problems are described in a solution as proposed. Are we talking about a problem and then describing the solution, proposing a solution? Right? So we don't see problem and solution being described like this, right? So can we say it's two related problems and solution being proposed? Two different solutions to a problem are examined and a third is proposed. Where are we proposing a third solution? Primary reason for a major problem are enumerated and explained. Primary reason for a major problem are enumerated. Like these are the reasons. One approach to a problem is rejected as ineffective and alternative is presented. Two arguments about a problem are described and the shared assumptions identified. Not all the options look very good. Like none of the options in fact look good. Two arguments about a problem are described. We are not describing two arguments and then saying, stating some assumptions involved in any of them. We can eliminate this. Related problems are described. No. Different solutions to a problem examined and a third is proposed. There's no third solution being proposed. So C and D. Primary reasons for a major problem are enumerated and explained. One approach to a problem is rejected as effective and alternate is presented. So that is what we see, right? First, the paragraph introduces the activity centered programs, and it then tells us that all these companies nowadays, consulting companies, and define goals. They define in a long goals in a long term form. Global manner typically involve formulation of new managerial philosophies, and what all is done under activity centered program is described here. The second paragraph, of course, overtakes activity centered programs by result driven and says that result driven is better than activity centered program because it's less costly, less efforts are involved in terms of preparatory duration, and desired outcome has better chances of coming up as in the execution side. And of course there are identifying goals. The phase of identifying goals is pretty easy as compared to activity driven programs and result driven program. So naturally this option is better. One approach to a problem, that is activity driven program, is rejected. Activity centered program, this is the approach which is rejected, and alternative approach, which is basically results driven program, is what he's referring to, has been considered for this, right? So answer should be D, Delhi, for question number 3. I hope everybody got the answer right. It was not very tough, guys. I hope this was good to go. Let's move ahead to the next question now. Let's have a look at question number 4. Let me know if you want me to take you back to the passage. Author of the passage asserts which of the following about activity centered improvement program. So you can probably look at the options. And in case you'd still want me to take you back to the passage, I can take you back and then maybe we can discuss it together. All right, let's have a look at the question, guys. Author of the passage asserts which of the following about activity-centered programs. So what has been mentioned about this program? They are based on a mistaken assumption about the benefits of broad-based improvement efforts. What is the assumption? And are we actually referring to the assumption here? Cannot be implemented without the aid of consultants? No. They produce better results for some kinds of businesses than for others. Very vague again. They produce long-term advantages but create short-term problems. They focus primarily on ensuring that employee morale will improve. So if we are confused about the question, we can always look back. So activity-centered programs often advocated by consulting firms, often, it's not always. So that means which can be implemented even without a consulting firm. So can I eliminate this option? They cannot be implemented without the aid of consultants? Of course, most of the cases they can be. And then it says, and typically involve formulation of new managerial philosophies as well as extensive motivational problem-solving training or employees. Companies assume that if they introduce enough improvement activities, operational performance will improve. That is what the assumption is, that if they introduce enough improvement activities, then operational of the company should improve, right? And here it says they produce better results for some kind of businesses than for others. They produce long-term advantages based on mistaken assumption about the benefits of broad-based improvement efforts. So none of the statements goes with this. And then, of course, costly effort. However, programs consultants summarize the progress by citing improved employee communication and morale, but no improvement in profits. That means they can improve the morale. That's what it says, right? So can we say they focus primarily on ensuring that employee morale will improve? That is what the activity-centered programs do. They help in improving morale and communication, but not the performance of the company altogether, not the profits of the company or revenues. Answer should be E echo for this. Okay. Any doubts on the question so far, guys? Anything we did not understand? Let's move ahead to the next one. Let's have a look at this one. Author of the passage suggests that in comparison with the results-driven, activity-centered programs are what? Okay. This is again a fact-based question. Also, it's a local question. You just need to go back to the second paragraph and you get the answer. Okay. So I'm going to give you 1 minute, quickly go through the options. If in case you want to refer the paragraph, I'll take you back and then we discuss the question. All right. Just taking you back for a while, guys. Please have a look at this paragraph in case you need to. Okay, so it gives us a comparison. Now I'm taking you back to the question. I hope everybody is with me. Let's have a look at it. Author of the passage suggests that in comparison with the results-driven programs, activity-centered programs are what? Are they better? How are they better if they are? Right? Occasionally more cost-effective. Can we say activity-centered programs are more cost-effective? It's the results-driven program. It says results-driven program require little initial investment, set specific short-term goals, as increased yields in delivery, reduced time, and reduced product development time. implement procedural changes only when they lead to directly to improved results, whereas activity-driven programs invest time and money in preparatory efforts. So it's like more costly. It's not as cost effective as uh, your results-driven program would be, right? So occasionally more cost effective. No, not they are. They're not. Less practical, less expensive, not really. Less popular with managers, more effective in small businesses, no. So naturally, it's going to be less practical as the correct answer. That's what we got. B, Bombay, as the correct answer. I hope we got the logic behind it. Even if you did not understand why is it correct, you can just have a look at it this one. So it says procedural changes only when they lead directly to improved results, whereas activity driven invest time and money in preparatory efforts that rarely yield desired outcomes. Okay. Results driven approach identifies specific goals and results and resources, tools, and action plans needed for meeting them. Right. So this shows that results driven program are better as compared to activity centered programs. And activity centered programs, what do? They are not as practical, they are more expensive, they must be more popular amongst managers if we talk about the results driven program. So activity driven program, activity centered programs are less practical. That is B, Bombay is the correct answer. I hope all of us are good with the question. Okay, we're going to quickly try two quick questions of grammar, also testing you on your vocabulary. You can see the question on your screen, guys. Then we move ahead to another passage very quickly. Very quick 30 seconds questions. She has been dashed of murdering her husband. So she can be blamed, no. Arrested, no. Accused or charged. So initially it could be an accusation. We cannot be we cannot even say charged, right? If a person is not very sure whether he or she is responsible for XYZ committing a murder of, ABC, so naturally it has to be an accusation. So it should be accused. Charged नहीं हो सकता जब तक उस पे 100% श्योरिटी नहीं है. ठीक है? Why are you so hungry? Oh, I dashed breakfast this morning. I hadn't, I didn't, I haven't, or I didn't have. Okay. So again, this one is based on your tenses. We'll be discussing tenses very soon, maybe in the next session itself. But for now, you to understand, oh, I hadn't breakfast this morning. I didn't have. Of course, when you're using did, you always use verb ka third form. Okay. So I didn't have breakfast this morning. Okay. Next session, I'll make sure that we are revising all the concept of tenses itself first, and then we move ahead to another topic of subject verb agreement. But this one, for you to understand, did ke saath we always use verb third form. It's like, for example, if I say, we did not went to school. So most of the times people use it like this. We did not went to school, but went cannot be used, right? Did ke saath we use verb ka first form, not third form. That's what I said. So we can't be using V3 with did because did is already past tense. Okay. So we cannot use third form. So we use didn't have here. So I didn't have. Okay. I didn't have breakfast this morning because did has to use, it always takes verb first form. It's like go, went, and gone, right? So I can't use went or gone. We did not went to school, we did not go to school. No, it should be go to school. Why? Because if you're already using did in the sentence, we always go for verb first form. So we need to use go here and not went. I hope this was clear, guys. Okay, another short paragraph, not very tough. I'll give you 1 quick minute for every paragraph. Go through it, then we discuss it together. Very quickly, guys. All right, moving ahead to the next one. All right, next paragraph, guys. Okay, the quick last paragraph. So we are practicing the lengthiest of the passages so that CMAT or other, passages which you'll be practicing along with the CMAT for your CMAT preparation, this shouldn't look very lengthy to you, right? If there are two paragraphs in an exam, you practice for three, things become easier for us. Okay, so we will be discussing the general idea, the structure and tone, and also some questions I'll be giving you for homework for this particular passage. Let's have a look at it together, right? We have questions after this. So let's start from here. What type of passage did you find it was? Was it a humanities? Was it a social science, or a business passage itself? What was your understanding? This is your passage two, and of course, this is also a business passage, guys. Okay. So what does the paragraph talk about? It says a key decision required of advertising managers is whether a hard sell or soft sell strategy is appropriate for a specific target market. Okay, what are we talking about? A target market here. Okay, in that target market, the discussion is about the decision whether advertising managers, whether they go for hard sell or soft sell. So hard sell is when you are very, very strict, of your selling strategy, when you are trying to sell an article, an entity, even if the other person is not ready to purchase it. Soft sell is when you do it, but without letting the other person know that you're trying to sell the person. Okay, sell the article to the person or a strategy to a person. So, hard sell or soft sell strategy is appropriate for a specific target market. Hard sell approach involves the use of direct, forceful claims regarding the benefits of the advertised brand over competitors' offering. Right? It's like involving the use of direct, forceful claims. Whatever I'm saying, it's definitely true, even if it's not. For example, Fair and Lovely makes you fair. That's a forceful claim regarding the benefits of advertisement brand over competitors' offering. In contrast, soft sell. So I get to see the tone of the author here, and the paragraph itself is very much analytical. He's trying to compare what happens in hard sell, what happens in soft sell. Okay. So in contrast, soft sell approach involves the use of advertising claims that imply superiority more subtly. So whatever the benefits, the claims are, they're very subtly driven in the advertisement. They're not very self-proclaiming or very exclusively, made out there. Very subtle. So one positive aspect of the hard sell approach. Now he's talking about the pros and cons. So hard sell ke positive approach is its use of very simple and straightforward product claims presented as explicit conclusions with little room for confusion regarding the advertiser's message. So we don't lead the consumer or the user with a room to think over, what the claim states or whatever is there in the advertisement. It's without any room left for the user or consumer to make some assumptions around the claim, right? It's 100% surety, more transparency. However, some consumers may resent being told what to believe, and some may distrust the message. Some might say, no, this is too true to be too true, right? This is too strong to be true, too true to be true. That's what I mean. It's not that possible, given to the real conditions. This cannot be possible at all. So resentment and distrust often lead to counter argument. So of course the consumer would want to counter now, and to boomerang effects, which consumers come to believe conclusions diametrically opposed to conclusions endorsed in advertising claims. So what advertisement says and what they believe is a proper 180 degrees between the two beliefs. So that's why it says as a boomerang effect. Boomerang means impact हम कुछ और जा रहे थे और उसका कुछ और उल्टा impact हो गया, because they do not want to be fooled. They think they're fooling us. Right? So by contrast, risk of boomerang effects is greatly reduced from soft sell approaches. One way to implement the soft sell approach is to provide information that implies the main conclusions the advertiser wants the consumer to draw, but leave the conclusion themselves unstated. Because consumers are invited to make up their own minds, implicit conclusions reduce the risk of resentment, distrust, and counter argumentation. Now it's talking about soft sell. Mein kya hota hai? Because there's a lot of room for the conclusion to admire the claims and then think around the possibilities, themselves get into the process of visualizing what it might lead to, some sort of they can think around what the claim says basically. So there's a room for some kind of trust and distrust already, right? So there's a chance of argumentation, but a little lesser chance as compared to given by the hard sell approach. Okay, because now what they start with, the imagination might be lesser. So recent research on consumer memory and judgment suggests another advantage of implicit conclusions. Beliefs or conclusions that are self-generated are more accessible from memory than beliefs from conclusions provided explicitly by other individuals. So if it's a hard sell approach, then the beliefs are explicitly given. They're the conclusions which are given by the other individual. But if it is self-generated, which is in the case of soft sell, that would be more on your imagination, thus have a greater impact on judgment and decision making. Moreover, self-generated beliefs, that is in the case of soft sell, are often perceived as more accurate and valid than the beliefs of others, because other individuals may be perceived as less knowledgeable or may be perceived as manipulative or deliberately misleading, right? So in the other case, that might be misleading. Deliberately misleading means intentionally misleading. So despite these advantages, implicit conclusions may not always be more effective. Now it's trying to say that soft sell is not always as good as maybe hard sell is, not effective than explicit conclusion, not as good as hard sell is. Now why? That is what is being stated here. One risk is that some consumers may fail to draw their own conclusions. They don't know what to think, what to imagine, thus miss the point of the message. Thus they tend to miss on the major important point that they're trying to state. Inferential activity is likely only when consumers are motivated and able to engage in effortful cognitive processes. Another risk is some consumers may draw conclusions other than the one intended. Even if inferential activity is likely, there is no guarantee that the consumers will follow the path provided by the advertiser. So sometimes it might also happen that what we are thinking, what we want the consumer to believe, they might not think from that perspective itself. So finally, a third risk is that consumers may infer the intended conclusion but question the validity of their inference. They might believe what you're saying, the intended conclusion, they might be able to understand that, but they do not know how strongly or for how far is the point valid, right? So this itself creates a lot of opposite impact than what was intended by the creators of those advertisement. They wanted the user, the consumer, to think from a certain angle, but the consumer tends to think from a different angle, right? So they question the validity of the inference itself. They think that what I'm assuming, is it actually correct? Am I actually thinking the right thing? Now that kind of a question might hit the consumer. So this was the passage we did. There are some questions. I'm showing you the question, guys, very quickly. You can make a note of this, maybe just take a picture of it. This is for your homework. This is for your understanding, to understand that yes, we have done one passage and I haven't solved this question for you, but I want you guys to solve it for me as a homework. When we meet next for the CMAT session, I would be definitely discussing these questions with you. We'll be quickly taking a recap of the passage and solving these questions. Okay, till then, in case you have any doubts or anything, you can put them in the chat box. I would love to take them up, address them in the next session. And we'll be doing more passages and more of grammar rather than just carrying on with the RC, because RC is something we've already done in the 2 sessions. Let's focus more on grammar rules, some grammar principles, so subject, verb, agreement, tenses, and pronouns. All right. So I hope you've noted down the questions. You've taken the screenshot of it. Let's meet again for the next session on coming Wednesday. Thank you so very much, guys, and have a very, very good night. See you very soon. Thank you.